The crystal glasses clinked against each other as I balanced the heavy silver tray, weaving between tables of Versace suits and Chanel dresses. My feet ached in the mandatory 4-inch heels. Another night at Sovereign, the most exclusive restaurant in the city where the wealthy came to be seen and the desperate came to serve them. "Watch it," hissed Melissa as I nearly collided with her, the champagne in my flutes threatening to spill. Her eyes darted nervously toward the private section where management had been frantically preparing all afternoon. "The Volkov party is here. Don't screw this up." My stomach clenched. Even the staff whispered about Alexei Volkov, though no one ever said exactly what he did. Just that he owned half the city, and the other half was afraid of him. I adjusted my tight black dress that the manager insisted enhance tips, but only seemed to enhance unwanted attention. 6 more months of this, I reminded myself. 6 more months until I had enough saved for Mom's treatment. The main doors swung open, and the restaurant's atmosphere shifted instantly. Conversations dimmed, backs straightened, eyes averted. 2 broad-shouldered men in dark suits entered first, scanning the room with cold efficiency, before one nodded almost imperceptibly. That's when I saw him. Alexei Volkov didn't stride in like I expected. He moved with unhurried confidence, as if the world would simply wait for him. He couldn't have been older than 35, his dark hair precisely cut, his tailored suit revealing a physique that suggested he hadn't earned his power from behind a desk. What struck me most were his eyes, pale blue and utterly unreadable, like looking at winter through bulletproof glass. "Section 4. Now," my manager whispered harshly, shoving another tray into my hands. "They've requested you specifically." "What? Why me?" I asked, my voice rising with panic before I caught myself. "The Russian girl for the Russian table. Just don't embarrass us." My heritage wasn't something I advertised, especially since my mother and I had left Moscow 12 years ago, trading a dangerous situation for simply a desperate one. I'd kept my accent carefully neutralized, my past vague. But on my application, I'd listed Russian as a language skill, thinking it might help with international clientele. I approached table 4 with my heart hammering against my ribs. 4 men sat around it, with Volkov positioned to see the entire restaurant. A 5th chair remained empty beside him. 2 bodyguards stood behind, their eyes constantly scanning. I didn't miss the slight bulge beneath their jackets. "Champagne, gentlemen?" I offered in English, my voice steadier than I felt as I placed each glass with practiced precision. They barely acknowledged me, deep in conversation about shipping routes and customs clearances, business talk that seemed innocent enough until I caught mentions of payments and officials' names. I kept my expression neutral, focusing on not trembling as I reached across to serve Volkov last. That's when my sleeve caught on his watch, an absurdly expensive timepiece that probably cost more than my yearly rent. The champagne tilted, splashing onto the pristine tablecloth mere inches from his suit. Time stopped. The conversation halted. Even the bodyguards tensed. "I'm so sorry," I gasped, mortified as I quickly righted the glass and reached for my cloth. Volkov's hand caught my wrist before I could dab at the spill. His grip was firm but not painful, a restraint rather than a threat. Up close, I caught his scent. Expensive cologne with undertones of cedar and something distinctly masculine. When he looked up at me, those pale eyes studied my face with unsettling intensity. "Ne volnusha," he said in perfect Russian. "Don't worry." Without thinking, I responded in my native tongue. "Prostite, eto ne povtoricha." "I'm sorry, it won't happen again." The words hung in the air between us. Something shifted in his expression. Surprise, then sharp interest. His thumb brushed almost imperceptibly against my pulse point before he released me. "What's your name?" he asked, switching to English but maintaining the intensity of his gaze. "Eva," I answered, suddenly aware of how the other men were now watching our exchange with curious expressions. "Eva," he repeated, as if tasting the name. "And how long have you worked here, Eva?" 6 months, sir." He nodded slightly, then turned to one of his companions and resumed their conversation, dismissing me. I backed away, relieved yet strangely unsettled. For the rest of the evening, I felt his eyes following me whenever I entered the main dining room. Once, when I glanced over, I caught him watching me with an expression I couldn't decipher. Assessment, perhaps, or calculation. It was nearly midnight when they finally prepared to leave. I was clearing a nearby table when Volkov approached the maitre d', said something in a low voice, then handed him what looked like a business card. The maitre d' nodded repeatedly, his usual haughty demeanor replaced with eager deference. As Volkov turned to leave, his eyes met mine across the room. He didn't smile, didn't nod, just held my gaze for 3 long seconds before breaking the connection and walking toward the exit. Flanked by his security, I exhaled slowly, unaware I'd been holding my breath. Eva. My manager appeared beside me, his expression unreadable. Mr. Volkov was very impressed with your service tonight. He's requested you personally for his dinner reservation tomorrow evening. I'm scheduled for lunch tomorrow, I stammered. Not anymore, he said curtly. And Eva, wear your hair down tomorrow, Mr. Volkov's request. A cold shiver ran down my spine. I left work at 1 a.m., exhausted and uneasy. The October night had turned bitter, and I wrapped my thin coat tighter around myself as I hurried toward the bus stop 3 blocks away. The streets in this part of town were nearly deserted at this hour, populated only by the occasional late-night reveler or fellow service workers trudging home. The sound of an engine slowing behind me made the hair on my neck stand up. A black SUV with tinted windows pulled alongside, matching my pace. I quickened my steps, pulse racing. The rear window lowered silently. Alexei Volkov looked out at me, his expression impassive in the dim streetlight. Ava, he said, my name sounding different in his mouth, heavier, more significant. It's late. Let me drive you home. It wasn't a question. Behind him, I glimpsed one of his bodyguards, watching me with flat eyes. Thank you, but I'm fine with the bus, I replied, trying to sound polite but firm. The SUV stopped. Volkov stepped out, and suddenly he was walking beside me, his long coat fluttering slightly in the cold breeze. Up close, without the restaurant's soft lighting, he looked more dangerous, the elegant veneer covering something harder, like a wolf in a bespoke suit. A woman who speaks Russian like a native shouldn't be riding public transportation at this hour, he said. It's not safe. How do you know my Russian is native? I asked, immediately regretting engaging him. A slight smile touched his lips. The way you rolled your R's. Moscow region, I'd guess. Northern district? I stopped walking, startled by his accuracy. How could you possibly know that? I know Moscow well, he replied simply. Then, more softly, and I know when someone is hiding something. My heart stuttered. I'm not hiding anything. I just want to go home. Of course. He gestured to the SUV. That's all I'm offering. Every instinct screamed danger, yet I found myself hesitating. The night was cold. The bus would take 40 minutes, and something in his manner suggested refusal wasn't really an option. Just a ride, I clarified. He nodded once, then opened the car door himself rather than leaving it to his security. As I slid into the leather seat, I noticed the interior was immaculate, smelling of leather and the same cologne Volkov wore. He entered after me, keeping a deliberate space between us. Where do you live? He asked. I gave him an address 2 blocks from my actual apartment, unwilling to reveal my exact location. As the SUV pulled smoothly into traffic, Volkov studied me with those unreadable blue eyes. You're Russian. You learned it young. It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. I lived there until I was 15. And now you're serving champagne to men who don't deserve it, he observed. Why? The directness of the question caught me off guard. It pays the bills. There are easier ways to make money. Not honest ones. This drew a genuine smile from him. Brief but transformative, softening the hard angles of his face. Honesty is rare in my experience. Maybe you're meeting the wrong people, I said, then bit my lip, wondering if I'd overstepped. But Volkov only leaned back slightly, his eyes never leaving my face. Maybe I am. The rest of the drive passed in silence that should have been uncomfortable, but instead held a strange tension, like the air before a storm. When we reached the address I'd given, he made no move to let me out. Your manager tells me you work double shifts most days, he said. Why? I stiffened. I don't think that's your business. Instead of anger, my response seemed to please him. No, it's not, but I'm making it mine. Before I could reply, He reached into his coat and withdrew an envelope, holding it out to me. "Take it." I didn't move. "What is it?" "Open it." With reluctant fingers, I took the envelope and peered inside. Cash. More cash than I'd make in 3 months at the restaurant. "I can't accept this," I said, trying to hand it back. He made no move to take it. "Consider it a tip for excellent service." "This isn't a tip. This is—" I struggled to find the words. "An investment," he finished for me. In future conversations, I placed the envelope on the seat between us. "I'm not for sale, Mr. Volkov." For a moment, his expression hardened, and I glimpsed something dangerous beneath the polished surface. Then, unexpectedly, he laughed. A low, genuine sound. "No," he agreed, "I don't believe you are." He took back the envelope, which makes me all the more interested in tomorrow's dinner. The door beside me opened, his driver standing at attention. I stepped out into the cold night, oddly relieved and disappointed at once. "Good night, Eva," Volkov said. Then, as I turned to leave, he added something in Russian, spoken so softly I barely caught it. "Sni o tebe ne dayut mne pokoya." Dreams of you give me no peace. I froze, unsure if I'd heard correctly, but when I turned back, the window was already closing, his face disappearing behind the dark glass. The SUV pulled away, leaving me alone on the sidewalk, my breath forming white clouds in the frigid air. I waited until the vehicle disappeared around a corner before walking the 2 extra blocks to my actual apartment, constantly looking over my shoulder. Only when I was inside, door locked and chain fastened, did I allow myself to breathe. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "I'll send a car at 7 tomorrow. Wear something blue." My hands trembled as I deleted the message, wondering how he'd gotten my number and what I'd set in motion with a few careless words of Russian. I barely slept that night, tossing between anxiety and an inexplicable, unwanted fascination. By morning, dark circles shadowed my eyes, which I carefully concealed with makeup. My mother called while I was getting ready, her voice frailer than the week before. "The doctor says I might qualify for a new trial," she said, hope threading through her words. "But the copay, Eva, it's almost 20,000. My stomach twisted. "That's wonderful news about the trial, Mom. And don't worry about the money. I'm figuring it out." I didn't mention Volkov or the envelope of cash I'd refused. Some instinct told me to keep those worlds separate. "You're working too hard," she said, the familiar worry in her voice. "I hear it." "Maybe I should just try the standard treatment." "No," I cut in firmly. "We've been through this. The standard treatment has a 30% success rate. This trial is at 78. We're doing it." After hanging up, I stood before my closet, staring at the pitiful selection. Nothing blue except a simple wrap dress I'd worn to a friend's wedding last year. It would have to do. I spent the day in a fog of anticipation and dread, watching the clock tick toward 7. At 6, I was dressed, my hair falling in loose waves past my shoulders as requested. By 6:30, I was pacing my tiny apartment. At 6:45, my phone buzzed. "The car is outside." I considered not going, considered calling the restaurant with some excuse, considered running. Instead, I grabbed my coat and headed downstairs. The same black SUV waited at the curb, but no Volkov inside this time. Just the silent driver who opened the door without a word. As we pulled away, I noticed a small gift box on the seat beside me. Inside was a delicate silver bracelet with a small sapphire charm. No note, no explanation. Just the unmistakable weight of expensive jewelry in my palm. I returned it to the box without putting it on. We didn't drive to Sovereign, too. Instead, the SUV took me to Avalon, a restaurant so exclusive I'd only heard rumors about it. A converted penthouse with just 5 tables, each in its own private room with panoramic views of the city. The kind of place where you didn't ask prices because if you needed to know, you couldn't afford it. The elevator attendant took me directly to the top floor where a host was waiting. "Mr. Volkov is expecting you," he said, leading me down a hallway lined with original artwork that probably cost more than my mother's entire medical treatment. He ushered me into a room where floor-to-ceiling windows revealed the city spread out below, glittering like fallen stars. A single table was set with fine china and crystal, silver candlesticks holding tall white tapers that cast a warm glow. And there was Volkov, standing by the window, his back to me as he gazed out at the skyline. He turned as I entered, and something flickered across his face. Satisfaction, perhaps, or pleasure. He wore another immaculate suit, dark against his crisp white shirt, the fabric emphasizing the breadth of his shoulders. "Eva," he said, my name again sounding like something valuable in his mouth. His eyes traveled over me, lingering on the blue dress. "You look beautiful." "Thank you for the invitation," I replied formally, pretending this was normal, that it was perfectly ordinary for a waitress to be dining with a man whose name made restaurant managers tremble. His gaze dropped to my bare wrist. "You didn't wear it." "I couldn't accept it," I said. I brought it with me to return. I placed the small box on the edge of the table. Instead of anger, amusement touched his lips. Most women would have taken it without hesitation. "I'm not most women." "No," he agreed, pulling out a chair for me. "You're not. That's precisely why we're here." A server appeared with champagne, pouring 2 glasses before disappearing silently. Volkov lifted his glass in a toast. "To unexpected discoveries," he said. I took a small sip, the champagne far finer than anything we served at Sovereign. "Why am I here, Mr. Volkov?" "Alexei," he corrected. "And you're here because you intrigue me. Because I speak Russian? Because you speak Russian like a Muscovite, but work 16-hour shifts serving drinks to men who don't look you in the eye." He leaned forward slightly. "Because you refused money that would clearly help whatever situation has you working those shifts. Because something in your eyes reminds me of myself, many years ago." The comparison startled me. "I doubt we have much in common." "More than you think." He took another sip of champagne, his eyes never leaving mine. "We're both from Moscow, both left under difficult circumstances, I imagine. Both reinvented ourselves in a new country." My pulse quickened. "You're making assumptions. Am I wrong?" I didn't answer, which was answer enough. The first course arrived, something delicate involving caviar and gold leaf, saving me from his penetrating gaze. "Tell me why you left Moscow," he said after the server withdrew. "That's a very personal question for someone I just met. Is it the questions that bother you, or that you want to answer them?" He set down his fork, studying me. "I already know some of it, Eva Nikolaevna Petrova." I froze at the sound of my full name, one I hadn't used since leaving Russia. "How do you—" "I make it my business to know things," he said simply. "You left with your mother when you were 15. Your father stayed behind. He died 2 years later in what was reported as a robbery gone wrong." Blood rushed in my ears. No one knew these details. We'd been careful, changed our names, built new identities. "What do you want from me?" I whispered. "Right now, conversation. Eventually, we'll see." The meal continued with course after exquisite course, Volkov guiding our discussion to safer topics, books I enjoyed, places I'd seen, music I preferred. He listened with genuine interest, asking thoughtful questions. Despite my wariness, I found myself relaxing slightly, drawn into his intense focus, the way he seemed to weigh and consider each thing I said. He spoke of his own passions, chess, classical music, Russian literature, with unexpected eloquence. In another life, he might have been a professor or a diplomat instead of whatever he actually was. "Your father," I finally ventured as dessert was served. "Was he also in your business?" A shadow passed over his face. My father believed in the old ways. Brutality over strategy, force over finesse. He cut precisely into the chocolate soufflé. "I learned from his mistakes. And what business is that exactly?" I pressed. His smile was enigmatic. "Import, export, primarily, though my interests are diversified." "Is that what you call it?" "What would you call it, Eva?" There was challenge in his voice. I met his gaze directly. "I'd call it organized crime." I expected anger, denial, perhaps even threats. Instead, he laughed, a genuine warm sound that transformed his face, revealing a dimple in his right cheek. "Honesty," he said appreciatively. "As I mentioned, it's rare in my experience." After dinner, he suggested a walk on the private terrace that wrapped around the penthouse. The October night was cold, the wind sharper at this height. When I shivered, Volkov removed his suit jacket and draped it over my shoulders in a surprisingly gentlemanly gesture. It carried his warmth and scent, enveloping me. "Your mother is ill," he said after we'd walked in silence for a moment. It wasn't a question. I stiffened. "How much investigating have you done?" "Enough to know she needs specialized treatment. Enough to know you're killing yourself with double shifts to afford it." He stopped, turning to face me directly. "Let me help." "Why would you do that?" I asked, suspicion rising. "You don't know me. I want to know you," he said, his voice lowering. "I've never met anyone quite like you, Eva, and helping my mother is the price of admission?" His expression hardened. "I'm not buying you. Is that what you think?" "What am I supposed to think? You research my background, send expensive gifts, offer money for my mother's treatment. People like you don't do things without expecting something in return. People like me," he repeated, his voice dangerously soft. "And what do you know about people like me?" The wind whipped around us, carrying away my answer. In the city lights, his eyes looked almost silver, cold and penetrating. "My father worked for men like you," I finally said. "He did their accounting, managed their money. When he tried to leave, to bring us to America legally, they killed him. Made it look like a robbery." My voice shook slightly. "So yes, I know enough about people like you." Volkov was silent for a long moment, his expression unreadable. When he spoke, his voice was different, softer, with emotion I couldn't identify. "I'm sorry about your father." "Are you?" I challenged. "Contrary to what you might believe, I don't harm innocent people. That's not how I operate." He stepped closer, and despite myself, I didn't back away. "The men who hurt your family, they're no longer in positions of power." Something in his tone made me shiver. "What does that mean?" "It means things changed in Moscow after you left." His hand rose, hesitating before lightly touching a strand of hair blown across my face, tucking it behind my ear. The contact was brief but electric. "Some organizations were restructured. A horrible suspicion formed." "Did you know my father?" His eyes held mine. "Not personally, but I knew of his situation. It was handled differently than it should have been." The implication hung in the air between us. "You had something to do with it," I whispered. "With what happened in Moscow after we left." "I had everything to do with it. No pretense now. No charming smiles or careful words. Just raw truth in the cold night air. The men who threatened your family, who killed your father, they answered to someone who answered to me. And when I discovered what happened, I ensured they were held accountable." My mind reeled, trying to process what he was telling me. "Why would you care about one accountant?" "I didn't at the time," he admitted. "But I care about how things are done, about rules and boundaries." His jaw tightened. Families were supposed to be off limits. Lines were crossed. I stepped back, suddenly needing distance. His jacket slipped from my shoulders, but he caught it, his fingers briefly brushing mine. "I should take you home," he said, reading my expression. "You need time to think." The ride back to my apartment was silent, heavy with unspoken questions. This time, Volkov gave the driver my actual address without me saying a word, confirming my suspicion that he'd known where I lived all along. When we arrived, he walked me to the door of my building, keeping a respectful distance. "I'd like to see you again," he said. "I don't think that's a good idea." "Because of what I am, or because of what you're afraid you might feel?" The question struck too close to the confusion swirling inside me. "Both," I admitted. He nodded, accepting this with surprising grace. "Your mother's treatment," he said. "Let me take care of it. No strings attached." "There are always strings," I countered. "Not this time." He reached into his pocket and withdrew a business card, simple white, with just a phone number embossed in black. "This is my private line. Call it if you change your mind, about anything." I took the card, our fingers brushing again with that same jolt of awareness. "Good night, Eva," he said softly, then turned and walked back to the waiting SUV. I watched until the vehicle disappeared around the corner, then entered my building, mind swimming with revelations and contradictions. Inside my apartment, I leaned against the door, turning the business card over in my fingers, wondering what twisted path of fate had connected my family's tragedy to this dangerous, compelling man. My phone buzzed with a text message from the same unknown number as before. Your mother's treatment is paid for. The clinic will call tomorrow to schedule. This isn't a debt. It's atonement. I stared at the message until the screen went dark, torn between gratitude, suspicion, and the unsettling realization that Alexei Volkov had just forced his way into my life whether I wanted him there or not. Later that night, I received a call from Dr. Harmon, my mother's oncologist, confirming that an anonymous donor had covered the entire cost of her treatment and participation in the clinical trial. When I asked who, she simply said, "The donation came through the Volkov Foundation for Medical Research. Apparently, they've been funding our work for years." I lay awake until dawn, wondering what I'd stumbled into, and whether I could find my way out, even if I wanted to. The following morning, I called my mother, careful to keep my voice steady as I told her the news about her treatment being covered. "But how?" she asked, disbelief and hope mingling in her voice. "Eva, that's nearly $20,000. It's a foundation that supports the clinical trial," I said, the half-truth bitter on my tongue. "They selected a few participants to fully fund. You were lucky." "It's a miracle," she whispered. I closed my eyes, picturing Alexei Volkov's intense gaze. Not a miracle, a man with motives I still couldn't fully understand. After hanging up, I stared at Volkov's business card, turning it over and over between my fingers. That single moment in the restaurant, my instinctive response in fluent Russian to his comment, had somehow altered the course of my life. My carefully constructed anonymity, shattered by 3 words. I'd spent 12 years hiding the fact that I was Eva Petrova, daughter of Nikolai Petrov, who had kept books for one of Moscow's crime families before attempting to flee with his family. My mother and I had escaped with new identities, while my father stayed behind to finalize our documentation. He never made it out, and now Alexei Volkov had appeared, claiming some connection to my father's fate, and worse, claiming to have avenged it. The restaurant called mid-morning. "Mr. Volkov has requested you be reassigned as his personal server for all future visits," my manager said, barely concealed curiosity in his tone. "May I ask what happened last night?" "Just dinner," I replied vaguely. "Nothing special." His skeptical silence spoke volumes. "Well, whatever it was, he's made it very clear you're to be available whenever he comes in. He's also arranged a substantial stipend to the restaurant to secure your services." My stomach tightened. I didn't agree to that. "Eva," he said, exasperation evident. "This is Alexei Volkov we're talking about. Do you have any idea how much business he brings us? How many connections he has? Just do whatever it is you're doing, and be grateful." I ended the call feeling like walls were closing in around me. Volkov was systematically inserting himself into every aspect of my life. My work, my mother's treatment, even knowing my actual address when I'd deliberately given him a false one. That evening, I had a shift at Sovereign, but Volkov didn't appear, nor the next day, or the one after that. Almost a week passed with no contact, though I sometimes caught myself scanning the restaurant for his distinctive figure, or starting at the sound of a deep voice with a slight Russian accent. It was Saturday night, when everything changed again. I was serving a table of loud businessmen when I felt it, that unmistakable weight of being watched. Glancing toward the entrance, I saw not Volkov, but one of his security men, the tall one with the scar along his jawline. Our eyes met, and he gave a slight nod before turning to speak to the maitre d'. Minutes later, I was called to the front. "Package for you," the maitre d' said, handing me a small envelope. Inside was a note written in elegant script. "I have information about your father you need to hear. Car outside if you're interested." AV. My hands trembled. Information about my father. What could Volkov possibly know that I didn't? And yet, he had known details about our situation, had somehow connected himself to what happened after we fled. "I need to take my break," I told the maitre d', who merely nodded, clearly under instructions to accommodate me. Outside, the familiar black SUV waited. The same security man opened the door without a word, revealing Volkov sitting alone in the back seat, his expression serious. You have information about my father? I asked, remaining on the sidewalk. Yes, he replied simply. But not here. I hesitated, weighing fear against curiosity, suspicion against the growing, unwanted pull I felt toward this dangerous man. 15 minutes, I finally said, sliding into the seat beside him. I need to be back for my shift. You won't be returning tonight, Volkov said as the car pulled smoothly away from the curb. I've already arranged it with your manager. Anger flared. You can't just commandeer my life like this. I'm not commandeering anything, he replied calmly. I'm giving you a night off with full pay. Most people would say thank you. Most people don't have a Russian mafia boss making decisions for them, I snapped. Instead of anger, my outburst drew that rare, transformative smile from him. So you've decided that's what I am? Isn't it? Labels are simplistic things, he said, looking out the window as the city blurred past. Especially in our line of work. Our line of work? I echoed incredulously. I'm a waitress, not a criminal. His gaze returned to me, sharp and assessing. Your father wasn't just an accountant, Eva. The simple statement hit me like a physical blow. What are you talking about? Nikolai Petrov was much more than the Zubarev family's bookkeeper, Volkov continued, watching my reaction closely. He was a skilled operative within their organization, helping to move money internationally, structure complex financial instruments, hide assets from authorities. No. I shook my head in denial. My father was forced to work for them. He had no choice. At first, perhaps, Volkov conceded. But he was good at it. Very good. Eventually, he became essential to their operations. My throat tightened. You're lying. I have no reason to lie to you. His voice remained gentle, almost sympathetic. Your father made a lot of money for very dangerous men. Then he decided to leave, taking not just his family but substantial documentation that could have damaged their operations. Memories flickered through my mind, hushed arguments between my parents, the growing tension in our household, my father's increasingly erratic behavior in those final months. How do you know all this? I demanded. Because when I took control of the Zubarev operations 5 years ago, I went through their records extensively. His eyes held mine. Your father's name came up repeatedly, both for his skills and for what was termed his betrayal. The SUV turned onto a private drive leading to a modern building of steel and glass overlooking the river. Security gates opened automatically as we approached. Where are we? I asked as the car stopped at a private entrance. My residence, Volkov replied. The documents I want to show you are here. Every instinct warned me not to enter this man's home, yet the promise of information about my father, truths I'd never known, pulled me forward. The penthouse was surprisingly understated. Elegant but not ostentatious, with clean lines, dark woods, and floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing the city lights. Art hung on the walls, original pieces that looked Russian in origin, landscapes of birch forests and snow-covered mountains. Drink? Volkov offered, crossing to a bar of polished mahogany. No. Just show me whatever you brought me here to see. He nodded, gesturing for me to follow him into a study lined with bookshelves. He unlocked a drawer in his desk and removed a file folder, placing it on the surface between us. Before you look, he said, his hand remaining on the folder. You should know that what's in here may change how you remember your father. Are you prepared for that? I swallowed hard. I want the truth. The truth, he repeated, something like respect in his eyes. He removed his hand, pushing the folder toward me. Inside were photos, documents, financial statements, all featuring my father's name or image. Bank transfers to accounts in Switzerland and the Cayman Islands, properties purchased under shell companies. Photos of my father with men I didn't recognize, men with hard faces and expensive suits. And most damning, a document outlining a plan to take millions from the Zubarev family accounts, disguise the transfers, and disappear with the money alongside his wife and daughter. He was stealing from them, I whispered, the reality crashing down around me. He wasn't just leaving, he was robbing them. Yes, Volkov confirmed quietly. About $20 million. I looked up at him in shock. That's why they killed him. Not just because he was leaving, but because he was taking their money. The Zubarevs didn't tolerate betrayal, Volkov said. especially not from someone they'd trusted so completely. "And you?" I asked, my voice breaking slightly. "What did you do when you discovered all this?" He moved around the desk, leaning against it just inches from where I sat. "I found the men responsible for your father's death and dealt with them." "Why?" I pressed. "You said yourself he betrayed them. By your own code, didn't he deserve what happened?" "Perhaps," Volkov acknowledged, "but his family didn't. The order was to eliminate Nikolai Petrov. Instead, they threatened his wife and daughter, forced him to watch your escape, tortured him for information on the missing money, then executed him." His jaw tightened. "That wasn't business. That was sadism. So you—" "What?" "Avenged him. I established new rules," he said simply. "Families are off limits, period." I stood abruptly, needing space, overwhelmed by revelations about my father and this enigmatic man who'd somehow appointed himself our protector. "I don't understand why any of this matters to you," I said, pacing the study. "Why track me down? Why pay for my mother's treatment? Why any of this?" Volkov watched me, his expression softening fractionally. "Because when you spoke Russian in my restaurant that night, something clicked. I'd been looking for Nikolai Petrov's family for years, not to harm you, but to make certain amends. And suddenly, there you were." "Amends for what?" I demanded. "You said yourself you weren't personally involved." "No, but I inherited the organization that was," he countered. "And I believe in setting things right." I stopped pacing, studying him with new wariness. "There's more you're not telling me." For the first time, Volkov looked away, a muscle twitching in his jaw. When he spoke again, his voice carried an emotion I hadn't heard before, something almost like guilt. "Your father contacted me, specifically before he died," he finally said. "I was rising in the ranks then, known for being different, more strategic, less brutal. He reached out, offering information in exchange for protection for his family." My heart pounded painfully against my ribs. "And?" "I ignored him," Volkov admitted, meeting my eyes again. "I was ambitious, focused on my own advancement. I dismissed his request without consideration." "And he died," I whispered. "Yes." The single word carried the weight of regret. When I later took control and discovered what had happened to him, what had been done to his family, I tried to find you, to make what amends I could. "So this is about your guilt," I said flatly. "Not about me at all." His expression hardened. "It started that way," he acknowledged. "But from the moment you answered me in perfect Russian, looking into my eyes without fear or deference, it became about you." The intensity in his gaze made my breath catch. He stepped closer, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body, smell the now familiar cedar notes of his cologne. "I've never met anyone like you, Eva," he said, his voice lowering to a near whisper. "Someone who sees what I am and doesn't cower or fawn. Someone who challenges me, fascinates me." "I'm not something to collect," I said, though I didn't step back. "Or possess." "No," he agreed. "You're something far more dangerous." His hand rose to my face, fingers hovering just shy of contact, as if seeking permission. "You're someone I can't stop thinking about." The confession hung in the air between us, charged with possibilities both thrilling and terrifying. Before I could respond, his phone rang with a distinctive tone that made his expression instantly shift to something colder, more controlled. He checked the screen, jaw tightening. "I need to take this. Excuse me." As he stepped out of the study, speaking rapid Russian into the phone, I turned back to the folder on the desk. My father's secrets spread before me. Photos of a man I thought I'd known, smiling with criminals, living a double life. Had he been a victim forced into crime, as he'd always told my mother and me? Or had he chosen this path, seduced by money and power until it destroyed him? Through the partially open door, I caught fragments of Volkov's conversation. Tense, authoritative commands punctuated by silence as he listened to whoever was on the other end. "Niet, сейчас," he insisted. "No, now." Then, "Oni už zdes." "They're already here?" The shift in his tone made me tense. Something was wrong. He returned moments later, his expression grim. "We need to leave. Now." What? Why? What's happening? I asked as he quickly gathered the documents, returning them to the folder. There's a situation I need to handle, he said vaguely, ushering me toward the door. My security will take you home. In the hallway, 2 of his men appeared, their expressions tense, hands hovering near concealed weapons. They spoke to Volkov in hushed Russian, too fast for me to catch more than a few words. Perimeter. Compromised. Team. Volkov turned to me, his face now a controlled mask. Change of plans. You'll need to stay here for a while. I'm not staying here, I protested. Whatever's happening is not something you should be involved in, he cut in, his voice brooking no argument. Mikhail will show you to a guest room. Please, Eva, for once don't fight me on this. There was genuine concern in his eyes. Not for himself, I realized with a jolt, but for me. Before I could respond, the distinct crack of gunfire echoed from somewhere in the building. Volkov immediately pushed me behind him, drawing a pistol from beneath his jacket. Zashchitait yeye, he ordered sharply to one of his men. Protect her. The security guard grabbed my arm, pulling me down a hallway away from Volkov, who was already moving in the opposite direction, weapon ready, all trace of the contemplative man from moments ago replaced by something lethal and focused. Wait! I called after him, a sudden irrational fear gripping me. He paused, glancing back. Yevernus, he promised. I'll come back. Then he was gone, and I was being hurried through the penthouse to a secure room with steel-reinforced doors, my mind reeling from revelations about my father, confessions from Volkov, and the sudden eruption of violence that had shattered the moment between us. As the door sealed shut behind me, I sank onto the edge of a bed, wondering how my life had spiraled so completely out of control in the span of a week, all because I'd answered Alexei Volkov in my native Russian without thinking. Hours passed in the windowless room, my only company the steady tick of an ornate clock on the wall, and the muffled sounds of movement beyond the door. Twice I heard what might have been gunshots, distant but unmistakable. Once, voices raised in argument, Russian, too indistinct to understand. I tried the door periodically, unsurprised to find it locked. Not a guest then, a prisoner. The room itself was luxurious. King-sized bed with silk sheets, ensuite bathroom with marble fixtures, elegant furnishings that whispered of wealth without shouting it, a gilded cage, but a cage nonetheless. Sometime after midnight, the lock clicked. I tensed, backing away from the door as it swung open to reveal Alexei Volkov, his pristine appearance from earlier now disheveled. His white shirt was partially untucked, a smear of something dark, blood, on his sleeve. A bruise was forming along his jawline. Are you hurt? He asked immediately, scanning me as if expecting injury. Am I hurt? I echoed incredulously. I've been locked in here for hours while people were shooting at each other. What happened out there? He entered fully, closing the door behind him. Up close, I could see the fatigue in his eyes, the tightness around his mouth, a disagreement with former business associates, he said, removing his suit jacket with a slight wince. It's been resolved. Resolved, I repeated flatly. Is that what you call it when people try to kill you? A grim smile touched his lips. No one tried to kill me, Eva. They were trying to send a message. What kind of message involves gunfire? The kind that happens in my world. He loosened his tie, studying me with those penetrating eyes. You're angry. I'm furious, I corrected. You locked me in here like a pet while you went off to... What? Shoot people? Get shot at? I don't even know what happened. I was protecting you, he said simply, as if that explained everything. I didn't ask for your protection, I nearly shouted. I didn't ask for any of this. Your help with my mother, your information about my father, your sudden appearance in my life turning everything upside down. He absorbed my outburst silently, his expression unreadable. Then, unexpectedly, he crossed to a cabinet, withdrew a decanter and 2 glasses, and poured what looked like whiskey. You deserve an explanation, he acknowledged, offering me one of the glasses. When I hesitated, he added, If I wanted to harm you, Eva, I wouldn't need to drug you. The blunt statement reminded me exactly who I was dealing with. I took the glass but didn't drink. The men who came tonight, he began, taking a seat in an armchair across from where I stood, were representatives of the Zubarev family. What remains of it? They discovered I'd been in contact with you. My stomach dropped. Because of me? This happened because of me? Because of me. He corrected firmly. I made a choice to find you, to make amends. There are those who felt I was betraying certain principles by associating with Nikolai Petrov's daughter. The daughter of a traitor, I said bitterly, recalling the documents I'd seen. Volkov's gaze was steady. The daughter of a man who wanted a better life for his family. I understand that motivation better than most. I finally took a sip of the whiskey, welcoming the burn. So what happens now? Am I in danger from these people? Not anymore, he said, something cold flashing in his eyes. As I said, the matter has been resolved. I didn't ask what resolved meant in his world. I wasn't sure I wanted to know. Can I leave? I asked instead. He studied me for a long moment. It's not safe for you to return to your apartment right now. Not tonight. He stood, wincing again, revealing a dark stain spreading on his side where he'd been concealing it with his arm. You're hurt, I gasped, setting down my glass and moving toward him instinctively. It's nothing, he dismissed, but didn't resist when I pushed his hand aside to reveal a bloodied tear in his shirt. This isn't nothing, I insisted. You need a doctor. What I need, he said, his voice dropping lower, is for you to stop looking at me like that. Like what? Like you care whether I live or die. The raw honesty in his voice caught me off guard. Our eyes met, and something passed between us, an acknowledgement of the strange, dangerous connection forming despite all reason and warning. Sit down, I ordered, finding my voice again. Where's a first aid kit? He smiled faintly. Bathroom cabinet, but it's truly not necessary. Sit down. To my surprise, he complied, lowering himself back into the chair. In the bathroom, I found a comprehensive medical kit and returned to find him with his shirt unbuttoned, revealing a muscled torso mapped with scars. Old bullet wounds, knife marks, evidence of a violent life. The fresh wound was a graze along his ribs, deep enough to bleed freely, but not life-threatening. As I cleaned it with antiseptic, my fingers brushing against his skin, I was acutely aware of his eyes on me, of his controlled breathing, of the heat radiating from him. You've done this before, he observed as I worked. My mother was a nurse, I replied, focusing on the task to avoid his gaze. She taught me basic first aid. Is that why you came to America, for her to work as a nurse? I hesitated, then nodded. We had papers prepared, work visa for her, student visa for me, everything legal. Then my father. I trailed off. Didn't make it out. Volkov finished softly. So you came anyway. We had no choice, I said, taping a bandage over the cleaned wound. We couldn't stay in Moscow after what happened. We used the documentation he'd prepared. Changed our names. Eva Petrova became Eva Parker, he murmured, hiding in plain sight. I stepped back, suddenly uncomfortable with the intimacy of the moment. This dangerous man half-dressed before me, sharing secrets in the quiet hours past midnight. I should sleep, I said abruptly. It's been a lot to process. Volkov buttoned his shirt, nodding slightly. Of course. I'll have someone bring you anything you need. He paused at the door. The room won't be locked, Eva, but I still ask that you stay until morning, when it's safer for you to leave. After he left, I sank onto the bed, my mind and heart racing. The events of the night played in endless loops. The revelations about my father, Volkov's confession of guilt, and his unexpected admission of fascination with me, the sudden violence, and now this strange, charged moment between us. I must have dozed off eventually because I woke to sunlight streaming through newly opened curtains. A set of clothes lay folded at the foot of the bed, designer jeans and a cashmere sweater that looked my size, tags still attached. On the nightstand sat a tray with coffee, fruit, and pastries. Stretching, I noticed a folded note propped against the coffee cup. Business called me away. Victor will take you home when you're ready. A strange disappointment settled in my chest, which I immediately tried to dismiss. What had I expected? That Alexei Volkov would be waiting to have breakfast with me after his disagreement last night? I showered, dressed in the provided clothes, which fit perfectly, raising questions about how he knew my size. and eventually emerged from the room to find one of Volkov's security men, Victor, presumably, waiting in the hallway. "Miss Parker," he greeted me formally. "The car is ready whenever you wish to leave." I followed him through the penthouse, noticing no signs of the previous night's violence. Everything had been immaculately cleaned and restored, as if nothing had happened. As we passed the study where Volkov had shown me my father's file, I paused. "Wait here," I told Victor, who raised an eyebrow but didn't object. Inside the study, I went straight to the drawer where Volkov had stored the documents. Locked, of course. I scanned the desk, finding nothing personal. No photos, no mementos, nothing to humanize the space. Just expensive furnishings and tasteful art. On my way out, I noticed something I'd missed the previous night. A chess set on a small table near the window. The pieces were mid-game, a complex strategy unfolding on the board. I recognized the Sicilian defense. My father had taught me chess as a child. Someone had played the black pieces with impressive skill, pushing white into a defensive position. "He plays every morning," Victor said from the doorway, nodding toward the chess set, against himself, usually. "He plays both sides?" I asked, studying the board more carefully. Victor shrugged. "Says it helps him think like his opponents." The insight seemed oddly intimate, a glimpse into Volkov's mind I hadn't expected. The ride to my apartment was silent. As we pulled up to my building, Victor handed me an envelope. "Mr. Volkov asked me to give you this." Inside was a key card and another note in the same precise handwriting. "If you ever feel unsafe, this will access the private elevator to my residence. No obligations, no expectations. Just a safe place. Tell him I don't need his key," I said, trying to hand the envelope back. Victor didn't take it. "Mr. Volkov anticipated you might say that. He asked me to remind you that pride makes a poor shield against bullets." The blunt statement left me speechless. I exited the car still clutching the envelope, watching as the black SUV merged back into traffic and disappeared. Inside my apartment, everything looked exactly as I'd left it, yet somehow different. Smaller, more vulnerable. I went through my routine motions, checking mail, watering my lone houseplant, returning a missed call from my mother to reassure her I was fine. All the while, the key card sat on my counter, a tangible reminder of the choice before me. Maintain my independence and the safe, struggling life I'd built, or accept the protection and all the complications offered by Alexei Volkov. 3 days passed without contact from him. I returned to work at Sovereign, where whispers followed me, rumors about my connection to Volkov, speculation about what exactly that connection entailed. My manager treated me with a new deference that made me uncomfortable. On the 4th night, as I was leaving my shift, a black car pulled alongside me. Not Volkov's SUV, but a sleek sedan with tinted windows. My pulse quickened, hand moving to the pepper spray in my purse. The window lowered to reveal not Volkov, but an older man with silver hair and cold eyes. "Eva Petrova," he said, my real name heavy with meaning in his mouth. "Or do you prefer Parker now?" I stopped walking, ice spreading through my veins. "Who are you?" "Someone concerned about your recent associations," he replied in Russian-accented English. "Alexei Volkov is not a man you want to know, girl." "You seem to know him," I countered, glancing around for witnesses, for escape routes. The man smiled thinly. I knew him when he was nothing, before he betrayed his own kind to build his empire. His eyes hardened, just as I knew your father before his betrayal. Fear gripped me. "What do you want?" "To offer advice," he said. "Volkov's interest in you has not gone unnoticed. There are those who would use you to send him a message. A painful one." "Are you threatening me?" I asked, proud that my voice remained steady. "Warning you," he corrected. "For old time's sake. Your father was a useful man once, before I could respond." The sound of screeching tires filled the street. Volkov's SUV appeared, cutting off the sedan. The older man cursed, his window rising quickly as his driver reversed, then accelerated away. The SUV door opened, and Volkov emerged, his expression thunderous as he scanned me for injury. "Are you hurt?" he demanded, closing the distance between us. "No," I managed, my composure finally cracking. "Who was that?" How did he know my real name? How did he find me? Volkov's jaw tightened as he watched the sedan disappear around a corner. Viktor Zubarev, he said grimly. The patriarch. He should be in Moscow. He said he knew my father, I whispered. And you. Something dangerous flashed in Volkov's eyes. Get in the car, Eva. No, I said firmly, finding my resolve despite the fear coursing through me. I want answers, not orders. I'm tired of being caught in the middle of whatever this is. He stepped closer, his voice lowering. You're not in the middle, Eva. You're the target. Zubarev isn't here for me. He's here for you. Why would he care about me? I asked, bewildered. I'm nobody. You're Nikolai Petrov's daughter, Volkov said urgently. The daughter of the man who stole millions from him and hid it so well they never found it. Zubarev believes you know where that money is. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. But I don't. My mother and I barely had enough to survive when we came here. If my father had millions, he never shared it with us. I believe you, Volkov said, his eyes never leaving mine. But Zubarev won't. To him, you're the key to recovering what was taken. A cold realization dawned. That's why you found me, I said slowly. Not out of guilt or fascination. You think I know where my father's money is, too. Hurt flashed across his face, genuine hurt that surprised me. Is that what you think of me? That this has all been some elaborate scheme to use you? I don't know what to think anymore, I admitted, suddenly exhausted. My entire life has been upended in a week. I don't know who to trust. Volkov was silent for a moment, tension radiating from him. Then, unexpectedly, he reached for my hand, his touch surprisingly gentle. Trust this, he said quietly. Whatever brought us together, fate, circumstance, your father's past, what I feel for you now is real, unexpected and inconvenient and possibly dangerous for both of us, but real. The raw honesty in his voice caught me off guard. Before I could respond, his security approached, speaking rapid Russian about movement on the block, about potential watchers. We need to go, Volkov said, urgency returning to his voice. Please, Eva. I can protect you, but not here on the street. This time I didn't argue. I let him guide me into the SUV, watching as he issued commands to his men, his entire demeanor shifting back to the controlled, dangerous leader I'd glimpsed the night of the attack at his penthouse. As we pulled away, his hand found mine in the darkness of the back seat, his fingers intertwining with my own. The simple contact anchored me amid the chaos, a lifeline I hadn't realized I needed. Where are we going? I asked softly. Somewhere safe, he replied, his thumb tracing gentle circles on my palm. Somewhere Zubarev won't find us. I should have been terrified, fleeing into the night with a man whose world revolved around power, violence, and control. Instead, I found myself leaning closer to him, drawn to his strength, his certainty, and the unexpected tenderness he showed only to me. I still don't understand why you care what happens to me, I whispered. In the dim light, his expression softened. Neither do I, he admitted. I only know that the moment you spoke Russian in my restaurant, looked me in the eyes without fear or flattery, something changed, something I can't explain or control. His fingers tightened around mine. And I never let go of what's mine. The possessive words should have frightened me. Instead, they sent a shiver of something else entirely down my spine. Something dangerous and thrilling that promised protection in a world suddenly full of shadows. The safe house was a modernist structure perched on a cliff overlooking the ocean. About 2 hours from the city, floor-to-ceiling windows faced the water, while the opposite side was built into the rock itself. Beautiful and strategically defensible. Volkov's security team swept the perimeter before allowing us to enter. No one knows about this place, Volkov explained as we stepped into the minimalist interior. Not even most of my own people. How long do we need to stay here? I asked, moving toward the windows where moonlight silvered the waves crashing below. Until I deal with Zubarev, he replied, his tone shifting to something harder, colder. A day, maybe 2. I turned to face him. Deal with him how? Volkov's expression was unreadable. It's better you don't know the specifics. I think I've earned the right to specifics, I countered. My life is in danger because of my father's actions and whatever this is between us. I deserve to know what's happening. He studied me for a long moment, then nodded slightly. Zubarev shouldn't be in this country. His presence violates certain arrangements between organizations. I've already contacted people who will ensure his departure. People who will ensure... I broke off, realizing what he meant. You're having him removed. Forcibly. Viktor Zubarev has spent 68 years taking what he wants and eliminating anyone who stands in his way, Volkov said, an edge to his voice. He doesn't respond to polite requests. And if he refuses to leave, then the situation becomes more permanent. The calm way he discussed potentially ordering a man's death should have horrified me. Instead, I felt a complex tangle of emotions. Fear, yes, but also a strange sense of security. Volkov would protect what was his, as he'd said. And somehow, I had become his to protect. You should rest, he said, gesturing toward a hallway. There are bedrooms upstairs. I need to make some calls. Too exhausted to argue, I climbed the floating staircase to the second floor. Finding a master suite with the same breathtaking ocean view, I showered, then borrowed one of Volkov's shirts from the closet, the soft fabric falling to mid-thigh. Outside, the storm that had been threatening all evening finally broke, rain lashing against the windows, while lightning illuminated the churning sea. I must have dozed off because I woke to the sound of the bedroom door opening. Volkov stood in the doorway, his silhouette outlined by the hallway light. He'd changed into simple black pants and a fitted t-shirt that revealed the powerful lines of his body usually concealed by tailored suits. I didn't mean to wake you, he said softly. Is everything okay? I asked, sitting up. Zubarev's people are looking for you in the city, he replied, remaining by the door as if uncertain whether to enter. But they won't find this place. Lightning flashed, briefly illuminating his face, the sharp angles, the intensity of his gaze fixed on me. In that moment, I saw both the dangerous man who commanded fear and respect and the complex human who had somehow developed feelings for me. You should try to sleep, he continued, turning to leave. Wait, I called, surprising myself. Stay, please. He paused, his back still to me. Eva, he said, my name almost a warning. You don't know what you're asking. I know exactly what I'm asking, I replied, finding confidence in the darkness, in the storm raging outside that matched the turbulence within me. I'm asking you not to leave me alone tonight. Slowly, he turned back. Even in the dim light, I could see the conflict in his eyes, desire warring with restraint. If I stay, he said, his voice lower, rougher, I'm not sure I can maintain the distance I've tried to keep. Then don't, I whispered. It was as if something snapped between us. In 3 strides, he crossed the room, his hands cupping my face with surprising gentleness before his mouth claimed mine. The kiss was everything I'd unconsciously been anticipating, passionate, demanding, yet somehow reverent. His fingers threaded through my hair, cradling my head as his body pressed against mine. I responded with equal fervor. Months of tension, fear, and unexpected attraction culminating in this moment. My hands explored the firm muscles of his back, feeling the evidence of his dangerous life in the ridges of old scars beneath my fingertips. Eva, he breathed against my lips, pulling back just enough to meet my gaze. Are you certain? Once this happens, there's no going back. Not for me. The possessiveness in his tone should have frightened me. Instead, it sent heat coursing through my veins. I've been running my whole life, I whispered. Maybe it's time to stop. His response was to kiss me again, deeper this time, laying me back against the pillows as the storm raged outside. What followed was a night of passion that matched the intensity of the tempest, tender one moment, fierce the next, our bodies speaking a language of need and belonging that transcended words. Afterward, as we lay tangled in sheets with rain still drumming against the windows, Volkov, Alexei, as he'd asked me to call him in our most intimate moments, traced patterns on my bare shoulder. I never expected you, he confessed quietly. In my world, relationships are transactions, power exchanges, strategic alliances. Not this. What is this? I asked, resting my head on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. His arms tightened around me, something I've never felt before, he admitted, something I'm not willing to lose. We made love again as dawn broke, sunlight replacing storm clouds, illuminating our bodies entwined on the bed. Afterward, we showered together, the simple domesticity of the act somehow more intimate than the passion we'd shared. Over breakfast on the terrace overlooking the now calm sea, Alexei received a phone call. He spoke in rapid Russian, his expression growing increasingly serious before ending the call with a sharp command. "What is it?" I asked, recognizing the tension in his shoulders. "Zubarev knows about this house," he said, already moving toward the interior. "We need to leave. Now." "How could he possibly—" "We have a traitor," Alexei cut in, his voice hard with controlled fury. "Someone very close to me. Get dressed quickly. We have 15 minutes at most." The peaceful bubble of the morning shattered. I rushed upstairs, throwing on clothes Alexei had arranged for me, practical jeans, a sweater, sturdy boots. When I returned to the main floor, he was issuing orders to security over the phone, a weapon now visible at his waist. "There's a helicopter pad behind the house," he explained, taking my hand. "We'll leave that way while my team creates a distraction on the main road." "A helicopter?" I repeated incredulously. "Alexei, this is insane." "We should call the police. The police can't help with this," he said firmly, guiding me through the house toward the rear exit. "Zubarev has people everywhere, including law enforcement." Outside, the wind whipped my hair as we sprinted across a manicured lawn toward a helipad where a sleek black helicopter waited, rotors already turning. Alexei helped me aboard, then climbed in after me, signaling to the pilot. As we lifted off, I caught sight of black SUVs approaching on the winding road leading to the house. Alexei's security team had established a roadblock, men with weapons visible even from our rising position. "They'll be okay?" I asked, watching the scene grow smaller beneath us. "They know what to do," Alexei replied, his attention on his phone as he sent what looked like coded messages. "The important thing is getting you somewhere Zubarev can't reach." "Where are we going?" He looked up, meeting my eyes. "My island." "Your island," I repeated flatly. "You own an island." A ghost of a smile touched his lips despite the tension. A small one. Private, secure. The helicopter carried us over the ocean for nearly an hour before I spotted it. A lush, green speck rising from the azure water. As we descended, I could make out a contemporary mansion nestled among tropical vegetation, a pristine beach curving around one side of the island. "It's beautiful," I said as we touched down on a landing pad near the main house. "It's also completely self-sufficient," Alexei explained as he helped me from the helicopter. "Solar power, desalination plant, satellite communications. We can stay here as long as necessary." The house was stunning, airy and open, designed to blur the boundaries between inside and outside. Staff appeared, respectful and efficient, bringing refreshments and taking our minimal luggage to the master suite. After they withdrew, leaving us alone in a spacious living area overlooking the sea, I turned to Alexei. "What's the plan? We hide out here while your men hunt down Zubarev?" He crossed to a bar, pouring 2 glasses of water before answering. "Not exactly. My people will ensure Zubarev leaves the country, but that won't solve the underlying problem." "Which is?" "He believes you know where your father hid the money," Alexei said, handing me a glass. "As long as he believes that, you'll never be truly safe." I sank onto a sofa, the weight of the situation settling over me. "But I don't know anything about my father's stolen millions. My mother and I struggled for years. If he hid money somewhere, he never told us." Alexei sat beside me, his expression thoughtful. "Perhaps not directly. But your father was clever. He might have left clues, information that seemed innocent, but would make sense only to you or your mother." "Like what?" I asked, bewildered. "Anything unusual he gave you before you left Moscow? Letters, gifts with special meanings, stories he insisted you remember?" I started to shake my head, then froze as a memory surfaced. "The chess set," I whispered. Alexei's eyes sharpened. "What chess set?" "My father gave me a chess set the day before we left," I explained, the memory growing clearer. "Hand-carved wooden pieces. He said it was a family heirloom, that I should keep it safe always." I looked up at Alexei, realization dawning. "I still have it. It's in storage with my mother's things back in the city. Something sparked in his eyes. Excitement. Calculation. We need to get that chess set. You think he hid information in it somehow? It would be exactly his style, Alexei confirmed. Complex, symbolic, requiring intelligence to decode. The perfect hiding place. For the next hour, we strategized. Alexei arranged for trusted associates to retrieve the chess set from my storage unit, using my keys and specific instructions on where to find it. By evening, he'd received confirmation that the set had been secured and was being transported to us. That night, as we lay together in the master suite, with ocean breezes drifting through open balcony doors, I voiced the question that had been troubling me. If we find the money, I asked hesitantly, what happens then? Alexei propped himself up on one elbow, studying my face in the moonlight. What do you want to happen? I considered the question carefully. I want my mother's treatment fully covered, not just this round. I want enough to ensure she never has to worry again. I paused, gathering courage. And I want freedom, to choose my own path without fear or financial pressure. And where does that path lead? He asked softly. Away from me? The vulnerability in the question surprised me, coming from a man so powerful, so controlled. I don't know, I admitted honestly. A week ago, you were a stranger, a dangerous one. Now, I reached up to trace the line of his jaw. Now I don't know what you are to me, except that I can't imagine walking away. He caught my hand, pressing a kiss to my palm, then don't. It's not that simple, I protested. Your world. What you do. It's so far from anything I know. It could be simpler than you think, he countered. The money your father took, it rightfully belongs to you now. With it, you could do anything. Go anywhere. His eyes held mine intently. Or you could stay with me, not as a possession, but as a partner. A partner in what? I asked cautiously. In everything, he replied simply. My business has many legitimate aspects that could benefit from someone with your intelligence, your perspective. And the other parts? He shrugged slightly. Those could perhaps become fewer over time. The implication was clear. He was offering to change, to shift his empire toward legitimacy. For me, you would do that. His expression was solemn, for the right reasons, for the right person. The chess set arrived the following morning via seaplane. It was exactly as I remembered, a beautiful wooden board with intricately carved pieces, slightly worn from years of play. My father had taught me on this very set, patiently explaining strategies, encouraging me to think several moves ahead. Alexei examined it with expert hands, testing the weight of each piece, running his fingers along the board's edges and undersides. The craftsmanship is exceptional, he commented. Museum quality. But I don't see any obvious hiding places. Maybe we're overthinking this, I suggested. Maybe it's just a chess set he wanted me to have as a memento. Alexei shook his head. Your father was too deliberate for that. If he gave you this specifically before you fled, it matters. He picked up the white queen, turning it in his fingers. These pieces feel slightly heavier than they should. For hours we examined every inch of the set without success. Frustrated, I began setting up the pieces in their starting positions, a habit ingrained from childhood. As I placed the black king, I remembered something. Wait, I said suddenly. My father always set up the board with a specific position before we played. He called it the memory position. Alexei watched intently as I rearranged the pieces into the configuration my father had shown me countless times, an unusual arrangement that didn't correspond to any standard opening or famous game I knew of. When the last piece was in place, Alexei studied the board, his expression changing to one of recognition. This isn't a chess position, he said slowly. It's coordinates. Working together, we translated the positions of the key pieces into a set of latitude and longitude coordinates, which led to a small town in Switzerland. Further analysis of the specific arrangement pointed to what was likely a safety deposit box number and the key, concealed inside the hollowed base of the Black King, just as Alexei had suspected about the piece's unusual weight. $22 million, Alexei said, looking up from his laptop after making some calls. Converted to various holdings and investments over the years. With compound interest, it's now closer to 30 million. He met my eyes. It's yours, Eva. All of it. I sat in stunned silence, the magnitude of the discovery washing over me. My father hadn't abandoned us penniless after all. He'd hidden his stolen fortune where only I could find it, protected by my childhood memories of our chess games. With this much money confirmed, Zubarev will be more determined than ever, Alexei warned. But it also gives us leverage. What kind of leverage? Financial compensation, he explained. Zubarev is, at heart, a businessman. If he receives what he considers fair restitution for what was taken, plus interest, he might be persuaded to end this vendetta. You want me to give him my father's money? I asked incredulously. Not all of it, Alexei clarified. Perhaps a third, enough to satisfy his pride and sense of justice while leaving you more than comfortable for life. The plan made logical sense, yet something in me rebelled against it. That money came at the cost of my father's life, I said quietly. Giving any of it to the family responsible feels like a betrayal. Alexei's expression softened. I understand, he said. But consider this. Your father took that risk to secure your future. Using some of it to guarantee your safety and freedom would honor his intention. In the end, we reached a compromise. Alexei arranged a meeting with Viktor Zubarev on neutral ground, an exclusive club in Zurich owned by associates with ties to both organizations. I insisted on being present despite Alexei's objections. He needs to see me, I argued. To understand I'm not afraid, and that I'm making this offer from a position of strength, not fear. Reluctantly, Alexei agreed, though he arranged security so comprehensive it bordered on excessive. The meeting itself was tense but oddly formal, conducted with the cold civility of adversaries who recognized mutual destruction wasn't in anyone's interests. Zubarev, up close, looked older than I'd expected, his once imposing frame beginning to stoop, his hands slightly tremulous despite his still sharp eyes. You have your mother's features, he observed when we were introduced, switching to Russian, but your father's calculating mind, it seems. I responded in the same language, my accent perfect after weeks of speaking it with Alexei. I have his chess set, certainly. Understanding passed between us. After tense negotiations mediated by neutral parties, we reached an agreement. 40% of the recovered funds would go to Zubarev's organization as restitution for the original theft. In exchange, they would formally acknowledge that all debts were settled and withdraw any claim against me or my mother. As we prepared to leave, Zubarev held me back with a gesture. Your father was an honorable thief, he said, surprising me. He stole only money, never lives. Remember that. The words stayed with me as Alexei and I returned to his island to finalize the arrangements for the transfer. With the threat from Zubarev neutralized and the majority of my father's fortune secured, I faced the choice Alexei had laid before me. You don't have to decide now, he said as we walked along the pristine beach at sunset. Take time. Think about what you want. I stopped, turning to face him with the ocean breeze in my hair and salt spray on my skin. I already know what I want, I said, meeting his intense gaze. I want to build something that matters. Something legitimate that my father would be proud of. Hope flickered in his eyes. And where do I fit into that vision? That depends, I replied, stepping closer to him. How serious were you about transitioning your business? Completely serious, he said without hesitation. It would take time, years perhaps, but it could be done. Then I want you as a partner, I said simply. In business, in life, in everything. The smile that transformed his face was unlike any I'd seen from him before. Unguarded, genuinely joyful. He pulled me into his arms, lifting me off my feet in an uncharacteristic display of emotion. I should warn you, he murmured against my hair. I'm possessive, protective, and used to getting my way. I've noticed, I laughed, wrapping my arms around his neck. Fortunately, I'm stubborn, independent, and not intimidated by powerful men. A perfect match, he agreed, his lips finding mine as the sun sank below the horizon. 6 months later, Alexei and I stood in the newly opened headquarters of the Volkov Petrova Foundation, dedicated to supporting refugees from political and criminal violence. My mother, now in complete remission thanks to the clinical trial, had taken a position as health program director. Across the city, The first of Alexei's former businesses had completed its transition to legitimate enterprise, a shipping company now specializing in humanitarian logistics. Others would follow, one by one, as we gradually transformed his empire into something we could both be proud of. "Any regrets?" Alexei asked, as we surveyed what we had built together. I thought of that night at Sovereign, when a few careless words in Russian had changed the course of my life. "Not one," I replied, lacing my fingers through his. Though I still can't believe it all started with me spilling champagne. His smile held all the warmth and intensity that had drawn me to him from the beginning. "It started the moment you spoke Russian to me without fear," he corrected, pulling me closer. "That's when I knew I'd never let you go." And as his lips met mine, sealing a promise that had begun in danger, but transformed into something unexpected and precious, I silently thanked whatever twist of fate had brought us together. The Mafia boss and the daughter of a thief, now partners in every sense of the word.